Greetings, everyone. This is a part two video. The first part of it would be um, worship. What is it that you worship? And we were just kind of describing how you worship things of all sorts of different avenues of how you show that something is worth it to you. So this is kind of a part two, and the question is, what is religion? Okay, because as I said in the previous video, I think that it's just kind of important to understand each other and to try to be speaking the same language. So, and I think that religion is one of those words that's tossed around, but I don't know if it's really understood or just kind of, it's like slapped with a derisive label as if to say, oh, the cause and solution to all of life's problems. So I would like to offer the best definition that I've heard of religion and to see if that helps to clarify things. And what I will do is explain some aspects, some questions that pretty much any good religion should pretty much any religion should ask, and I'll try a couple examples to see how that plays out. So, the best definition that I've heard of religion is that it is a system in which we relate to the object of our worship. In our last video, we asked the question, what is the object of our worship? And so I hope that, so if you haven't seen that one, I would suggest you go watch that first. It isn't terribly long, but the idea is to be honest with yourself and see what is it that's the most important thing to you, because based on the criteria that I give, you may find that what you think you're worshiping might not actually be it. So it's about being honest with ourselves. It's evaluating ourselves. So religion, a system in which we relate to the object of our worship. It generally answers these questions, and I have 5 of them here. 1, it answers the question of origins, which is who or what started all this? Or what is the beginning of all things? That's pretty simple. The second question is authority. Who or what is in charge? That's the question there. Or otherwise said, who makes the rules and who sets the moral standard? Understand that this might not actually be the same as origin, depending on what your religion is. And it otherwise asks, where can we find life's answers? So authority, who and what is in charge, who makes the rules, who sets the standard of right and wrong, where can we find life's answers? That's all in the context of authority. Function, the third question, function. That's how I said it. And a religion should answer, how are we supposed to behave in relation to this universe and its inhabitants? Or otherwise said, what is our design or programming, or what is our nature? What is the role and place of all creatures? Basically, how is the world supposed to be? How is it made? How should it function? Now, the fourth question is status. Because question 3 said function, what are we supposed to do? Question 4 is asking status, which is kind of like, how are we doing it? So the fourth answer that a religion should give is, what is the state or the standing or the condition of our existence? Is our function being fulfilled? Or otherwise said, is the authority being obeyed? So that fourth question, status, is how's it going? And then the fifth question is purpose, which basically means, what is the chief end of our existence? How is everything supposed to finish out? What is the objective? How will things end? Is there an end? Those kind of questions. So origins, authority, function, status, and purpose. Now, what I'd like to do is give my understanding, which this isn't necessarily comprehensive, and there may be some nuance that I'm not portraying correctly. But these are my best attempts at trying two different religions. And I picked these two because they're kind of opposites of each other, so we want to kind of try and see a contrast. Now, understand that I've made no secret. I am a Christian. I have made videos in regards to Christianity, or some basic theology or doctrine or whatever you want to call it. And so, obviously, this is kind of going to be coming from my point of view here. But this is how I see what's happening here. I'm going to go with atheism here first. So, atheism, usually, because we're talking about what is the object of our worship. So if an atheist usually worships mankind and his devices, and it's predicated on the rejection of divinity. I think that's the idea, is that atheism basically says, there is no God. And so that means that mankind becomes God. So let's go through these 5 questions and see how atheism answers these questions. The first question, origins. According to atheism, how did things start? Well, that would be the Big Bang, and then that would be evolution. So the idea is that the Big Bang, like hyper compressed. I've heard one guy say it was like hyper compressed hydrogen hydrogen that was just kind of always there, and the super small or ultra compressed singularity that exploded, and then we have the universe, and then it develops over billions of years and such. So that's how an atheist would say that the world started, was through the Big Bang, and then life continued to develop through evolution. So authority, the second question. Who or what is in charge? What's the status of right what's the standard of right and wrong? So according to atheism, it seems that authority is rooted in self, or in humanity, or you could say like social contract. They would say that basically man is God. Man decides what is good and what is right. Sometimes we come to agreements on things, and then we call it a social contract. That's one way you could say it. But really, it seems that in atheism, the authority really rests on whoever is in power, or whoever has influence in the world. So that could be the WHO. It could be the World Health Organization. It could be the Global Economic Forum. Maybe it's NATO. Maybe it could be presidents of superpower nations. The idea of might makes right and survival of the fittest. I mean, it seems to be in that sense that whoever has the power is in charge, whether you want them to be or not. Now, the third question, function. How are we supposed to live? Well, in the case of something where it's kind of an accident, there is no real, function it's just whatever happens, basically. And in atheism, it's survive, it seems. Do whatever feels good. Eat, drink, and be merry. That seems to be the idea of what the function of life is supposed to be, according to atheism. And status, how are we doing according to atheism, seems to be that they would say that life has evolved to be better over time to what we see today. The idea that we started with chaos and it gradually has come into order. Life is supposed to be getting better. An atheist would say that mankind is basically good, but there's no moral relativity, but there is moral relativity. So what might be right to one person might be wrong to another, but there's this idea to live and let live. And according to atheism, we live our best life when we do live and let live. Just you do your thing, I'll do my thing. Life is temporary, and humanity has no everlasting soul. So that leads us to question 5 that atheism would answer. What's the purpose of humanity? What is the chief end of our existence? Well, remember we said eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow we die and we pass into oblivion. It seems that according to atheism, everything will eventually be meaningless. Even if things are remembered now, someday no one will remember how things were. Much that once was is lost, for none now live who remember it. So ultimately, life is a pointless and improbable accident. It's kind of like, well, here we are, I guess. So that seems to be how atheism would answer those 5 questions, according to kind of how I've broken that down. Now, I'm going to compare that with Christianity. Now, the object of worship in Christianity is the triune God, which means God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. We believe that there are 3 distinct beings in one entity, and they are all of the same substance. So Christianity worships the triune God, or the Trinity. Now, let's go through these 5 questions. According to Christianity, what is our origins? Well, in the beginning, God created. Genesis 1:1. Or all things were made by him, which would be the Word or Jesus, according to John chapter 1. So, in the beginning, God created. God is the origin of the universe and the origin of humanity. The second question, authority. Who or what is in charge? How do we know what right and wrong is? Well, according to Christianity, God is sovereign. The Bible is his authorized codex. And it is through God that we understand right and wrong, because God defines that. God is the definer of morality. Question 3, function. How are we supposed to live? How were we designed? So humans are given the task, the function, to be fruitful and multiply, according to Genesis. That was the first command that God gave to humans. Was be fruitful and multiply, rule over the earth, obey God. Those are things that generally as humans we're supposed to do. Now, Christians, just kind of taking the next step there, Christians specifically, our function is to accept Jesus's atonement for sin, which means that he paid for the wrong things that we have done. We are to repent of our sin, to turn away from it and stop doing wrong. And we are to live in faith to Christ. We're supposed to make new disciples. We're supposed to love God and our neighbors. It's said to, I forget what the title of it, but it's what is the chief purpose of man? To glorify God and enjoy him forever. That is the function of specifically Christians. But yeah. So then question 4, how are we doing? What is our status? Well, we are all made in God's image. That's how he made us in the beginning. We were originally perfect, but we are degenerating over time. And I think my microphone is falling over time. Sorry. So number 4, status. We were made in God's image. We were originally perfect, but we are degenerating over time, both physically and morally, because of sin. And since the fall, which is when Adam and Eve disobeyed God in the Garden of Eden, humanity is born into sin, that's what we call original sin, is that we're born sinful. And humanity needs saving from eternal destruction by being born again in the Spirit. Human life is temporary, but it is a precursor to eternity. Rather than simply passing into oblivion, we pass into eternity. Abundant living requires surrender to God. So for how are we doing? How well are we obeying our function? Abundant living requires surrender to God in what he says is right and wrong, how we should be living according to the scriptures. But rejection of God invites misery, loneliness, and suffering. So, question 5, purpose. What is the chief end of all things according to Christianity? The world will be remade after God's final judgment of sin. The enemies of God will be condemned to eternal punishment, and those faithful to God will live happily ever after with him. That's how things end. But I mean, it's not really an end. It's a forever. It's a forever, a happy ever after. So those are two examples that I've given sort of my best take of putting these two kind of in nutshells. But again, the idea is, remember that a religion is a way of, it's how we relate to the object of our worship, and it kind of generally answers those questions there. Now, religion shapes and informs our worldview. Okay, worldview is a word that means the way that we perceive reality and relationships. It's the way that we believe the world should be. Whatever our religion is directly going to affect how we think the world should be. It affects how we see our role in bringing positive change to the world. So, a worldview can branch into people relations, family roles, career choices, acts of charity, like where we give, who or what we give charity to, advocacy. Well, okay, acts of charity can also mean acts of love, how we show love to people. Advocacy, activism, or politics. These are all things where the rubber meets the road. It's us putting our faith into action into the larger world. Okay? So it's not just what we believe in here, or it's not what we understand up here, but it's what we do with it. Okay? Because religion should affect our world. It does affect our worldview, how we see the world, how we act in the world, and how we think the world should be. And that changes, the things that we do, the things that are important to us. Because in the previous video, I asked, why is it that we get so passionate about things? Why are things so important to us? So, last year was an election year. At the time of this video, Donald Trump was just sworn back into the presidency for, as 47. And so, but there's this, I talked about how there was this big divide between people, these people groups. And generally, I think this is why the American political left and right have been showing themselves more apart than they are alike. It's because our worldviews are often based on diametrically opposite. Wait. Hang on. Our worldviews are often based on diametrically opposite worldviews because I'm not sure my sentence is making sense how I typed it. But our worldviews are different because our objects of worship are not the same. That's what I'm trying to say. Our worldviews are different because they're diametrically opposed because of our objects of worship. They're not the same. And so our convictions, which is the right and wrong that we believe in, what we know is right, what we believe is right, and what we think we ought to be doing, our convictions lead us to act out our faiths to different ends, depending on what your religion is. Even if we want something similar, and when I say religion, I don't even mean like established religions like Protestant, Catholic, Hindu, Shintoism, Islam. I don't mean any of those like big over umbrella things. I just mean what I mean by religion is the system of whatever it is of relating whatever it is you worship, because your God, let's say that your God is entertainment. That means that your religion is like the religion of popular culture. And then you watch movies all the time. You play video games all the time. You listen to music all the time. Whatever, and if that's the object of your worship, entertainment, popular culture, if that's your God that you worship, then that influences what you do through the world, or it influences what you do in the world. It influences what you think is important. It influences how you act with people. It influences what you spend your money on. It influences what you think should or should not be happening. And those thoughts are dominated, your worldview is dominated by what you worship. And so, whatever your religion is, whatever it is you worship, is going to change the way that you think the world ought to be. Even if you want something similar to someone of a different religion, like even if the left and the right have something that they both want, that's the same, the reasons for it could be very different. Even those within the same faction can vote or act similarly, but the root object of worship might be different. So just to kind of sum it up here for Christians, this is a chance to reflect on if we do truly worship God, or if we worship ourselves, or if we worship anything or idea created either by God or man. And to what degree do we do that? In the Bible, you see how there are people who would worship idols made of stone or metal or jewelry or wood. And the idea was that whatever their deity was would kind of, inhabit that object, or that object was kind of like a focal point to point them to whatever that deity was. And, the question was, do you worship God? Or do you worship some idol or image or idea that may be something that God made, or something that's an imagination or a corruption by man? So for Christians, this is a chance to, do you worship God? Think back about when I talked about worship. How do you worship God? How do you spend your talents on Him? How do you spend your money on Him? Do you tithe? How do you, where does your worship take you? Do you attend church regularly? Do you go to, maybe go to Christian concerts, or do you go to like seminars or conferences about Christian family life, or seeing a pastor give a talk or a message about a certain, whatever the thing is in mind, whether it's marriage or whether it's, it could be all kinds of different things. But then I'm not going to assume that everybody who watches this is going to be a Christian. And so I ask you, the viewer, how do you answer these questions? What do you truly worship? How do your actions prove its importance to you? And how is it working out for you? Is what you worship bringing joy in your life? Is it bringing meaning and purpose to your life? Do you see a future with it? Is it living up to your expectations? Or do you find that it fulfills and satisfies you? Or do you find that it's leaving you wanting more, or leaving you lacking? Excuse me. Again, I encourage you to engage politely in the comments. The idea is, let's be honest with ourselves. What do we think? Or maybe tell about how your worship has benefited your life, if you see it that way, and we'll see how it goes from there. So thank you for watching, and be thoughtful, be mindful, and as always, may the Force be with you.